I'm ready to conquer the world! Mine! This is the Ayaneo Konkr Pocket Fit. I am super stoked about this device because as I await the Retroid Pocket Nova, and I know that's going to date this video, but I really don't care because I do things my way on this channel. But I'm super stoked to have this device because this device actually has a chipset that is more powerful than the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 that is found in the Retroid Pocket Nova, the Odin 2 Portal, all those devices, the Retroid Pocket 6 even, but this device, the only problem with this is the driver support is not as mature as the driver support is on the AYN Odin 2 Portal and any of the other Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 devices. However, this device does at least have driver support, and this device gets a heck of a lot done. It is a more powerful device, and it is extremely premium. So let's go ahead and do a walk around on this device, okay? So we have some very, very nice, even though but small joysticks, okay? However, you can pop the caps off and you can replace them at will. So if you want bigger stick caps, then, you can order some and no problem there, okay? We have an all glass front on here, a 6-inch display on this device. So the resolution of this device is, your typical 1080p. However, this device gets up to 144 hertz refresh rate. And so, you can do a lot of cool stuff with that. Just the overall smoothness of looking at a refresh rate of any game that's capable of playing in that is pretty freaking awesome. But so let's look at the D-pad here. Okay, so the D-pad on this, highly accurate, very smooth, easy to push down on. Ayaneo in the past, I've had one of their previous devices that was a handheld PC, and the D-pad was very mushy, and it just felt hard to pull off fighting moves with it. But this one is actually very nice, like I said, very nice and accurate. Okay, now one thing that's kind of a pet peeve that I don't like about this device is that the start and select button is right here. This is it right here, your start and select. And so you have these buttons right here, okay? However, this one here toggles the performance mode of the device. So the button on the top left over here actually functions as your app switcher button. Okay, so app switcher, performance mode instead of start and select. So that takes some getting used to. A lot of people are not going to be happy with that, guarantee you. And then down here on the bottom, you actually have the Konkr button. So the Konkr button, basically when you tap the device, once you get the device turned on and you tap the Konkr button, it pulls up your performance overlay in the side of the screen here, where you can adjust things between eco mode and balance mode, which really is just doing the same thing that this button does up here. So you see here how I'm changing it. So I'm changing it right now to gaming mode, and then you can change it to max mode, which, for high-end PC gaming and Switch gaming, stuff like that, you're going to want to do that. But you can hear that fan kick in the back too. Listen to that thing go. Okay. And so you have these buttons on the back here also, by the way, that lock in your triggers, that change them from analog to standard input triggers, to where, there is no throttling or anything like that. It's just an instant click. Okay, and then you have these back buttons right here that are programmable. Most of the time I utilize these back buttons right here for the PlayStation 2. Okay, what I like to do is I like to map this one as a fast forward button and this one as a save state button. Okay, and then when you get up here to the top, you've got these, what do you call these here? Well, they just label these two buttons up here as LC and RC. So, but once again, these are just additional buttons that you can map, and you can, whatever you want to map them to, whether it's a save state or a load state or anything like that. And then, of course, you have your volume up and down up here on the top. Okay, and then you have your power button up here on the top as well. Okay, and I've got to turn that fan back off. That is just really kicking too hard for me. So we're going to kick it back down to eco mode. Yeah, there we go. Nice and quiet now. And so as you can see, this panel gets plenty bright. Okay, and plenty, well, I'm not going to call that the most dim I've ever seen, because I have actually seen screens that are more dim, much more dim than this. But it's a decent range of dimness, I will say that. Okay. So regarding the brightness to this device, it gets all the way up to 500 nits. So if you're wondering just how bright this is, that's how bright this is, 500 nits. So I'm going to back off on the brightness here so that the video doesn't get washed out when we jump into our gameplay testing. Okay, now when you look at your face buttons, okay, these are some very nice face buttons. I'm not going to say that they're quite as quiet as the ones on the Ayaneo Pocket Air Mini. However, they are pretty quiet. The layout that they went with on this handheld is the Xbox layout. I think that they may have done that, you know, presuming that a lot of people are probably going to attempt to do some high-end Nintendo Switch emulation. Oh, I'm sorry, not Nintendo Switch, but PC emulation. My bad, my apologies on that one. So one thing I don't hear a lot of people talk about with this device is the fact that when you go into this little home screen that they have here, okay, if you swipe down on it, okay, everything kind of pops up in a menu that I would say is very reminiscent of the Logitech G Cloud, if any of you out there own that, which I'm quite sure a whole bunch of you do. Okay, but what you can do is, if you don't want to look at all of your emulators on a board like this, or if you don't want to go into Emulation Station every time you boot up, then you can just you can hold down, you can long press on this one of your emulators, and then you hit add to dock. Okay, so tap like so, and then when you swipe down, there you go. Now it's added to that little sideways menu. So if you're trying to avoid going into all of the typical Android apps and you just want to stay focused on your gaming, then you can just keep in this space up here. Okay, and if you click on your IOSpace, okay, the cool thing about the IOSpace app is when you go into, not your settings, but, oh, and I'm sorry, I'm thinking of the wrong app right now. Give me just 1 second. Another cool thing about this device, much like its predecessors on Android, is the iOS setting app, okay, that you can click on. And that's where you can go into and fine tune your settings for your fan. So let's say that, you know, you just are worried that the device might overheat, but you don't want to put it in max performance. Then you can come here and you can turn up the fan mode. Or let's say that you want the maximum performance, but you don't want the fan on. Okay, then you can come in here and you can set up your profile to be maxed out, but you can also turn off the fan at the same time. And so having that ability, yeah, the device might get a little bit hotter than normal, and you may even see some thermal throttling depending on what it is you're playing, but at least you won't be keeping the person next to you awake if you're trying to play this next to someone in bed or anything like that. So that's always nice to have that there. And so you have your controller options right here where you can customize your button layouts. And you see here where it's got your ABXY mode, you can swap that to be the Japanese, which is basically your Nintendo Switch layout where your B and A are swapped as well as your X and Y. And so that's a nice option to have for certain emulators like Limeroid. If you're the kind of person that loads up Limeroid for all your classic gaming, then you'll know that the Xbox layout plays the Super Nintendo games properly. I don't know why it is that way, but it just is. So let's go ahead and get out of this. So, gameplay wise, we're jumping into Emulation Station Desktop Edition with this Ayaneo Konkr Pocket Fit and its Snapdragon 8G3 Gen 3 chipset. And I'm here to tell you, this thing's going to cut down and mow down pretty much anything in its path for the most part when it comes to gameplay. So, you know, basically take what you got out of the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 and then expand on it on some games that might have been even harder to play. Okay, now this is the base model version of this device, and so there are PC game limitations due to RAM limitations of this having only 8 gigs of RAM, but there are still a lot of PC games that you can play with this thing that are going to run at max frame rates because of that. So let's go ahead and jump into some gameplay, shall we? So here we are with some Game Boy, and because I got the black device, I love how it just kind of fades into the device to where, you know, it's obviously there's bezels there, but it's really not hella ridiculously, you know, noticeable all that much. And even for this device to be an IPS display, you know, when you tone down the brightness a little bit and you just look at how well everything looks on this IPS display, you would almost be fooled into believing that it was an OLED because it looks pretty rich, in all honesty. Just the smoothness of it and everything else. But I don't think that my camera can do it a justice. But compared to some of the e-waste handhelds, as some would consider them, that I've been reviewing lately, maybe it's just a personal bias. And here we are with some Game Boy Color with some Pokemon Pinball. Okay, so never played Pokemon Pinball before. The only thing that I got to be careful of is when I'm trying to start the game to make sure that I don't accidentally hit the the button up here thinking that it's start, because it's, you know, remember that's the performance mode button or what have you. Oh crud, what did I do? No, get me out of here. Yeah. Okay, boom, look at me go. I'm amazing at pinball. Yes. Look at me go, look at me go. Okay, so once again, Game Boy Color looking absolutely amazing on this 144 hertz IPS display. Okay everyone, so before I get too carried away with the gameplay, we're going to launch into some NES here with some Double Dragon 3, but I wanted to do a quick sound test to show you guys. This thing has some of the most impressive sound. This is by far probably one of Ayaneo's best devices when it comes to sound. Listen to how loud and punchy these speakers get. And these are bottom firing speakers. Bottom firing. Okay, so now we're going to jump into some NES gameplay, 4x3 content on this big beautiful device here, and let's see how she fares. Alright, so looking at this, once again, I mean, because of the fact that I got the black model, and not only that, but just the all-glass display in general, while a lot of people may not be able to stand it, it does do a pretty good job of hiding borders, you know, sometimes on some of these machines. And I think that this just looks absolutely great for this. Once again, for this to be an IPS display, it's looking mighty pretty. Alright, and here we are with some Super NES, and I figured I would pick a game that some people either have a love or hate relationship with, and that is Batman Forever. Okay, and when I was, the first time I played this game, I kind of thought it was cool because the fighting style was very reminiscent of like a Mortal Kombat game where you had the roundhouse kicks, and you had the sweeps and the uppercut where you could knock them through the air and stuff like that. But I quickly found out that this game, the AI on it was just absolutely goofed up. But anyway, this game plays fine, and if you played this game and got some enjoyment out of it as a kid, hey, somebody let me know in the comments if they actually enjoyed this game, or if you like wanted to rage quit this game. Okay, so jumping into 3x2 content here on the Game Boy Advance. Okay, and you know, obviously the Game Boy Advance being a wider aspect ratio is going to work in our favor on this. And so this Street Fighter game, I'm not sure if it actually got enough attention when it launched. Okay, but this is Street Fighter Revival on the Game Boy Advance. And so I'm sure it's got plenty of fans that are out there, but it basically like a souped up version of Street Fighter 2 that I feel like needs more exposure, needs more love. But looking at the D-pad on this, okay, remember this is a Game Boy Advance game, and yet, you know, I'm pulling off my fireballs perfectly. I'm not having any kind of problems here, okay? No problems with my hurricane kicks, no problems with my dragon punches. And so this is, like I said before at the beginning of the video, this is going to be an excellent D-pad, very accurate, very good for fighting games, and so on, etc. Okay, so for systems like Arcade and Neo Geo and, you know, MAME and, you know, Capcom Play Systems, you're not going to have any problems with those either. So here we are playing The Last Blade 2. This is Neo Geo. And as you can see, once again, you know, absolutely beautiful. Everything's rendering properly, no problems here. and I've heard great things about the last Blade fighting series, and so I actually need to take more time to actually get into this fighting series, because this game actually has a pretty big fan base from what I understand, and so I'm definitely gonna have to start looking into this one. Okay, so stepping into some PlayStation 1 gameplay here with some Tekken 3. This is one of the more demanding games on the PlayStation 1. Okay, some of the games that you would think would be demanding, because they move so slowly, actually turn out to be not quite as demanding as you would think. Games like Silent Hill, but, you know, this game is one that has been consistently difficult for lower-end hardware. However, obviously, you know, anyone who knows anything about the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, you know, the Snapdragon G3 Gen 3 is just going to chew through it even faster. And of course, we had to jump into some PSP gameplay with God of War, because, you know, one of the reasons why God of War is used is because, once again, it's another one of those games that is extremely demanding, and a lot of people have tried to run it on lower end hardware, and to various different results. I mean, a 3326 chipset's not going to get it done. A 3566 chipset's not really going to get it done either. Neither will the 3562. I mean, you basically are forced to jump into Android. So, jumping into some of the harder N64 titles to run, okay, Super Smash Bros. Is one of the hardest titles to run on the N64, apart from Cruisin' USA, and Top Gear Rally is also pretty hard to run. And then there are other games that just don't render properly on the N64, games like Vigilante 8, and so you actually have to turn on software emulation, essentially, almost, to get those games to run properly. But this looks beautiful upscaled to the full 1080p on this display, and so if you're a big fan of N64, this device is definitely going to be a delight for you for sure. Okay everyone, so here's where the rubber's really going to start hitting the road, okay, is when you get up into the higher class systems like PS2 and Gamecube, because if all you wanted was a good device with a decent sized screen to play, you know, up to N64 and PSP, then we've got devices like that with a very premium feel that are already on the market, okay? So if you wanted something like that that's pretty comfortable in the hands, then you could always go with something like the Anbernic RG Vita Pro, okay, which is a smaller device than this one, and it has a 5.5-inch 1080p display on it. You could also go with the Mangmi Air X, okay, which is probably, I say it's the budget device of the year contender, okay, so 5.5-inch display on it, Snapdragon 662, and it actually looks really nice too, but, you know, it'll get a little bit of PS2 and GameCube done, but not much. Okay, or if you wanted that 4x3, then you could go with one of Ayaneo's own budget devices, okay, the Konkr Fit versus the Ayaneo Pocket Air Mini here with a 4x3 display, which is still very premium feeling in the hands. If you wanted to jump up into a lot more GameCube and PS2, then you can get the tried and true Retroid Pocket 5 here, okay, and it's going to get a lot of these same games done. The only thing is you're not going to be able to upscale them as much. And so, but the Retroid Pocket 5 has been a tremendous device now, and a lot of people swear by this device. It's still very comfortable in the hands. OLED display on this one, okay? So that's where this device has an edge over the Ayaneo Konkr Pocket Fit, is the OLED display that is in it. And when you jump up into Odin 2 territory, okay, the difference between this device and the Odin 2, obviously the Odin 2 has that Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 processor in it, and it's going to get basically almost all of the same games done with the exception of higher end PC games. The Konkr Pocket Fit is going to eke out some higher frame rates on a lot of these, but the driver support for the Odin 2 portal is very, very mature at this point because of the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 processor that's in it. Plus, it has the 7-inch OLED display in it, and very, very bright, very, very comfortable device to hold in the hands. And the price point is where this device gets its edge. Apart from having that 7-inch OLED display over the Ayaneo Konkr Pocket Fit, okay, the price range on the Odin 2 Portal base model, which is 8 gigs, just like this device that I hold in my hands right now, is actually about $250 versus this device gets well into the, $300 and $350 and up territory, depending on where you purchase it from. Okay, but let's go ahead and jump into some of this PS2 PS2 and GameCube gameplay to show you how impressive the performance is on this device. Okay, so here we are with some PlayStation 2 gameplay with Time Splitter's Future Perfect, a very graphically demanding game with lots of shadow effects and wind and weather effects, and you just bouncing around, popping off on aliens or whatever the crap they are over here. And I really dig the whole, I don't know, almost kind of reminds me of, anyone remember a cartoon show back in the day? I think it was like Journey to the Red Planet or something like that. So it kind of gives me those vibes a little bit. But I'm just a big kid. I love cartoons. Okay, so here we are on the GameCube with some Sonic Riders. Okay, I've actually never played this before, but I kind of get tired of seeing F-Zero X all the time. Granted, F-Zero X is a cool game and everything, but the GameCube actually had a lot of cool racing games, and so I figured I'd show off something a little different. And since we all love the Blue Blur to some extent, even if we don't like his racing, well, some people don't like his racing games. I like his racing games fine, but except for the one that came out on the Sega Saturn, that was just absolutely horrible back in the day. But somebody out there probably loved it, and they're gonna roast me in the comments like, "How dare you, sir?" But this Sonic Riders game is actually pretty flippin' awesome, though. Anyway, Sonic Riders for the Nintendo GameCube, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so here we are with Plumber who needs to go on a diet, getting beat up by Barney's cousin. I don't, there's only so many ways you can say it, people. But yeah, our little Italian friend is running just absolutely fine on this device. This is SMW. And I honestly did not ever really give the Wii the chance that it deserved. What I ended up doing when I owned a Wii was I actually just ended up downloading the Wii Shop and then playing a bunch of N64 games on the Wii. And so I kind of didn't like a lot of the gimmickiness to it. I felt like it would have just been a better system had they just stuck to, having regular controls. But it had its fans, okay? It had its fans with the whole Wii balance board and all that kind of good stuff, or the sports titles. And so I'm not going to hate on it too much. But, for those who wanted to see a little bit of Wii gameplay, here it is for you. So for anybody who might have been wondering what DS would look like on this handheld, okay, this is actually running DS through Melon DS right now. Okay, I did not run it through Drastic because, once again, I'm just trying to do some different things that people don't typically see all the time, because I think that sometimes we get caught up playing the same games over and over again or using the same emulator over and over again, so everybody's just like DS, Drastic, 3DS, Citra, or 3DS, Azahar. And so I just like to show that, we still have different options for different things out here, and each of them brings something different to the table. But for DS titles, I'm telling you right now, this handheld is not going to have any issue playing DS titles. You just have to deal with the screen layout because it is a single screen device. Okay, so here we are with some 3DS emulation with Azahar, and this is actually running at 3x. This is Spider-Man Edge of Time, and a beautifully graphic game. I have shown this on one other video before. I'm trying to remember which one it was. Maybe it was my original Odin 2 video. I don't know. But anyway, you look at it, I mean, what an amazing game for the time that this system came out. You have to understand how old the Nintendo 3DS actually is to understand how good this game looks. So, okay everyone, so now we have some Frintendo glitch with Unbound worlds apart. Okay, and so if anyone hasn't figured it out yet, the Nintendo Switch is a 2D side-scrolling marvel. And what I really love about it is I'm glad that not every single game that we go to play these days is just some giant 3D open world whatever, okay? Because in all honesty, sometimes you want a game that you can just pick up and play, and most of the time the ones that are going to be the pick up and play that don't take as long to beat, that you can get some enjoyment out of, are going to be 2D side scrollers such as this one. And so I'm really happy that we're able to enjoy them on such really powerful handhelds as this one. Okay, so continuing on with some more Switch, since I figure that, if you're going to buy a high-end handheld like this, then you're buying it to play the high-end stuff, okay? And if you want to see Breath of the Wild playing at pretty much 30 frames a second, almost on lock, okay, run it with the T28 driver and just let her rip, okay? And it is a beautiful way to play this game. It reminds me of playing on the Odin 2 because of the heft of this, the original Odin 2. That's exactly what this reminds me of. The only difference is the original Odin 2 did not have nowhere near as bright of a display. And so, you could get the performance, you just wasn't going to get the, the brightness, and, you can carry this device outdoors and still see what the heck it is you're doing. So if you're looking for a comfortable way to do so, then this might be your chance. Okay, so next up we have some PC emulation with the latest version of GameHub. Okay, and I am using one of the latest versions of Turnip Driver on this device. And right now I'm sitting at about 27 frames per second, okay? And I do have auto frame gen turned on. And this looks amazing. This is better performance than what I was getting on my Odin 2 Portal. And so, that bump up in generation does definitely pay off a little bit on this regard. I mean, when you start getting into these higher end, PC and stuff like that, then yeah, you're definitely going to want that extra power. And if you can afford the extra RAM, then by all means, jump to, But I'm super happy with this. And I'm probably going to be doing a little bit more PC gaming on this device, just because of the fact that I do have that extra power. There's probably going to be some games that are still going to be a little bit more compatible with the Odin 2 Portal, just because of the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chipset. However, for other games that are moving on up in generation now, as they develop more driver support for this chipset, which I sure hope that they do, okay, we're going to see better things coming out for this thing. So what are my final thoughts about the Ayaneo Konkr Pocket Fit? Okay, so if you're looking for a very premium feeling, very ergonomic 16:9 display at 500 nits of peak brightness, okay, something that you can play pretty much outdoors. I wouldn't play it in direct sunlight. I wouldn't play any handheld in direct sunlight. But if you're looking for something that can play all the way up to PC games, okay, and do a pretty good job of it, okay, and can even upsize, or shall we say, upclass some of the games that the Odin 2 Portal can do because of the added power of the G3 Gen 3, okay, then the Ayaneo Konkr Pocket Fit might just be for you. But if you're wanting something that's as powerful as the Odin 2, but more like the size of the Konkr Pocket Fit, but you want an OLED display, then I would just go ahead and suggest that you pay the money to get the AYN Odin 3, which has a chipset that's even more powerful than the G3 Gen 3 that's in the Konkr Pocket Fit here. Or if you're looking for something maybe slightly smaller, but with, power that's close to it, then I'd recommend ordering the Retroid Pocket 6, which also has an OLED display, but it's a 5.5-inch OLED display like the one that you see on the Retroid Pocket 5 above the Konkr Pocket Fit in this picture right here. So me personally, I think that it's a fantastic device, and as far as price goes, when it first came out, it was the best pricing we had seen out of anything from Ayaneo, hands down. Okay, however, Ayaneo has this tendency to just jack the prices up on everything they sell. Like the Pocket Micro 2 that just came out is already well over $300. It's insane that they're charging that much for that. And so, Ayaneo, get a grip on yourselves, okay? And, bring your prices to something reasonable. Not everybody's made of money, okay? But I do love the Ayaneo Konkr Pocket Fit, and if you love it, then go ahead and purchase one. But other than that, I'm Josh the Fifth Wheel Gamer, and I am donezo.